See, I'm being so generous to Todd lately. I really would like someone to support me on how nice I'm being to Todd lately.
It's court mandated.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right. Today, welcome to the Sympraxis. It's October 16th, 2024.
Got a question.
And we're all together in a conference room, except sadly, Todd, who is on his way, he's coming. He's going to be here tomorrow. And Patrick, who is sadly locked in Iceland, although not the worst place in the world to be locked at. I see his fun pictures on social media. So the gang is all here in spirit, if not in person. And today is an Ask Sympraxis Anything. And we sort of prepped a little bit.
We have some questions already.
But do we have some questions? Can you? All right, Dana, hold please. And Casper has something too. All right, so we had put together a little bit of an agenda for if there isn't questions, but I'm going to sit on this slide then, since we have some questions, and we're going to do those first. But if we run out of questions and we need more things, we have some topics we could talk about: delegated versus app permissions, in Entra ID app registrations, to lead into Todd being able to have time to rant about PowerShell. See, I'm being so generous to Todd lately. I really would like someone to support me on how nice I'm being to Todd lately.
It's court mandated.
Oh,
Yeah.
you were that?
The judge said.
And we have some topic prepped on setting default values on columns, and that's actually from a question we got. And then if we had some time, Brand Center. Okay, so Dan has a question. Can you trigger an edit form from multiple items from the PnP Modern Search result web part? Yes, you can. I've done that. So I used a custom list column, and then I basically got the item ID and basically created a custom column that's an HTML, anchor tag with the URL to the edit item, and so the user can click, the edit item, and it opens up the item in a new tab for them to edit.
He's asking for multiple items, though. That would mean you would select multiple items and then want to edit those. I don't.
Well, yeah, but you could do a filter, so you could make a query that. The anchor tag was a query, so you could do that.
He wants to edit multiple items.
Yeah, so then it takes you to the list filtered to the items you want. It depends. I'd need more information on that one, but you can make a link. You could do whatever you can do to get to that URL. So you could make a filter that is a place you want to land, and then you could edit them. All right, we'll leave that unless there's more to that question that comes on the chat after. Okay, Casper, what's your prediction for document sets? Will they be deprecated or get some TLC? Casper?
I think Microsoft forgot that document sets even exist.
I agree with Todd.
I agree.
I agree with Todd.
I think they're going to languish. I think they're going to sit there in Classic until they just don't work anymore. Yeah, I think they're going to break the underlying functionality for them and not realize that it's broken.
Yeah, I think they're in the conversations I've had that are behind the scenes with people who know something about it. They all understand that document sets matter, but they also don't feel that there is enough usage. And of course, because they haven't fixed them, the usage is dropping. So
yeah, it's an inception issue.
It's really unfortunate because it's a very powerful set of capabilities. We lost the welcome page when they went to Modern, which was a very powerful part of what document sets were. I don't have any other information about that. Nobody is committed to doing it, and I think it's probably one of those budget opportunities. I got to stop looking at you guys.
I know, isn't that weird? I keep looking to the right too.
All right, so let me ask a stupid question. Could we potentially, with SPFX and custom forms in SPFX, recreate that? Like create a view form for a folder content type?
Well, it's got a lot. I mean, as you know.
Wow.
I know it has a lot, but
that is a fascinating question.
But here's the thing: if we can create, I'm just throwing this out there, but if we could create a custom form for the view experience or even the edit.
Yeah, because you could know what content type it is and put your own, yes, you
Right.
absolutely could do that.
So then
Yeah.
you can create your own
Oh,
welcome
fascinating.
screen.
Jeez.
Then in the welcome screen, if you felt so inclined, you could create a WYSIWYG like drag and drop to add documents, adds the documents on add into the folder, sets the
Updates
metadata,
content,
like
all
you can
the
set
things.
content
Yeah,
types. I mean,
all
that's
the
not a,
So we could build it.
So yes, I could build it.
that's not a trivial amount of work, but it,
I don't
feel
actually
like
think it's that hard.
I feel like we could do it.
It's not that hard.
I think you might be able to solve for that, but obviously document sets do a lot more than that, like pushing metadata down to the
Yeah.
containing documents and stuff. Some of that stuff still works generally,
Right.
some of it doesn't.
But if,
So they still need to, the
Yeah.
underlying plumbing still needs some help, I think.
well, that's the thing. If you have control over the new edit and view experience in SPFX of the folder,
Yeah.
then you could push all that metadata down.
Yeah, you'd have to, because you've now taken it over, you would have to implement the view, the new edit experience for the document itself. But again, not that hard,
Yeah.
as long as you were limiting yourself to some certain things.
Well, I would like to just go on record that I would like to ask Microsoft to just finish what they started and make
Well,
document sets do what they're
that
supposed to
would be
do. I
lovely.
always want to be on point for asking them that.
Can we put that,
But
do we
if
put
you
that
wanna-
before or after fixing recurring calendar events?
Are you asking that in a room with glass walls?
We unfortunately, we're in the like common area. Like, we're in with the people that they let in the building, so we would actually have to go upstairs to actually
And
talk
it's
to
not-
them. And this is an engineer.
Yeah.
This is,
Not the
We
this is,
we would get marketed at.
yeah, this is the MTC.
We have something better. Have you tried Coke?
Yeah.
I think we should move on to another.
Next.
Yeah, next. All right, Dan has a question / comment, I haven't read it yet. Viva Connections versus SharePoint Intranet. I have yet to actually implement a Viva Connections dashboard.
Yeah.
There's just not enough customization branding, and with SharePoint recently getting even more branding, what are your predictions on the future of Viva Connections?
All right, I'll take this one.
Go.
So.
Hold on, Derek. Derek, there is a follow-up to that too, which is you can even hack the default edit new experience to actually look modern.
What?
That's for document sets.
Oh, that's a document
Oh.
set. Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, interesting.
sorry. Is there a comment there? I
Oh,
don't
no.
go ahead.
Okay.
My
Go
bad.
back to the.
All right,
Go with the other thing.
Okay, so, the brand experience and the brand center stuff is all being rolled out to both Viva Connections and SharePoint at the same time. So where you create a custom theme or custom fonts, those are you can choose to, well, okay. They can be the same or they can be different. You can actually push, when you create a theme or a brand package, you are making it available to both Viva Connections and SharePoint. And you can, so in theory, you would come up with one company brand package and you would push it to both. What Brand Center supports and customizes today is, right now it's just fonts. Themes have come out recently, like started rolling out either end of last month or this month. And those are coming up. The new theming experience is coming out right now, where you can add new colors, create new color packages, and then push those color packages out to the individual sites and Viva Connections. So as far as the dashboard itself goes, there is not a lot of customization you can do there. I mean, you can customize the news, and what the news actually kind of works like the news web part. The resources are links like quick links, company quick links. And then anything else you're putting as an adaptive card extension in the dashboard itself.
I mean, I kind of have if you're building an intranet, why would you want to land on Viva Connections?
So I agree with you. I would put the intranet in your as your homepage, your intranet as your homepage for the Viva Connections app.
Microsoft is defaulting in the other direction.
They are.
So they're clearly pushing the other way.
Which for once I have no problem with, because most people who just roll out of bed and start up their M365 tenant haven't necessarily gone through this process of building an intranet, and thereby it's a fine landing spot. I mean, I don't have a
But
problem
Viva
with that.
Connections isn't even there until you turn it on. So those people will never see Viva Connections at all.
Oh, it isn't? I thought it was.
No, you have to turn it on.
Oh, all right, my bad.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's what I say to code.
this is, I mean, the thing with Viva Connections is you actually have to turn it on
Oh,
to
all right,
enable,
then I don't.
yeah, to enable the
You make-
I
experience.
take it back, I don't agree. Don't
I
agree at
haven't,
all.
I haven't had anyone find it compelling enough to want to use it. And yes, we're tending to come from the SharePoint direction, but.
So we're a little bit.
Yeah, but if you want your intranet as your default inside of Teams, which brings users to the intranet, which reduces friction, which reduces cognitive load, like they're working in the app that they're working for sharing, content sharing, chat, meetings, etc. There's a lot of value to that. You have to enable Viva Connections in order to put your intranet into the Viva Connections app. That was a really long way of answering your question, Dan, so I hope it was helpful.
Dan Thale had a refinement on his original question about editing multiple items in PnP Modern Search. What you would do, Dan, is how when you filter a view in a list, and if they were in different lists, this wouldn't work. But if you filter, if they're all in the same list or library, and you wanted to edit them all, like let's change all of them from United States to Denmark or something, then you could have the link that you construct in the template include the filter for that view as part of the query string, which would show you just the items that matched whatever filter you wanted. It seems like a lot of work to make that happen because they have to be in the same list anyway, unless you build a custom UI. If that helps.
All right, well, Casper had a question about, will we ever get mandatory metadata back again? The real thing, not what we have today.
When did we ever have that?
I'm a little lost in what that is. Casper?
You're not shy.
Yeah, well, no. Back in the day, back in Classic, we were actually able to prevent people to some extent from completing their upload or their creation of a new document because we could block it. Not from if they kind of synced it up, but still in the browser we could prevent it.
Right.
Not the old one.
But what that actually led to was people just not uploading stuff because it would block them, right?
Right.
So it was self-defeating. And when they introduced drag and drop into libraries, that all went out the window.
Yeah.
Because when you drag and drop something in, it's there. And so the mandatory doesn't mean anything. So I don't think that genie's ever going back.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I also don't think it worked well. I think it caused too much friction for users, and it actually led them to not use whatever container it was they were told to use.
Yeah, and they
put-
created in that view,
Unassigned,
what is it called?
unassigned or something.
No, required not.
Required information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
something like
Items
that.
needing attention.
Items needing attention, that's it.
Or they put bogus information in just to get past the mandatory part.
So
But then my impression is that people kind of overuse that feature. So if we could sort of like just keep it to one question or one field that they have to fill out, because sometimes it's really important in some of those more controlled scenarios. We desperately need that to be provided, that kind of information, and we just.
I think when it comes to people not wanting to do the thing that is correct and will lead them to a better result, it's a governance problem. And you can try to force the technology to make it so. I mean, they certainly could improve the document upload path. Right now it's drag and drop or the upload button that takes the document first and then asks you for metadata. There could be all kinds of different variations on that would make total sense if they built it that way. But I just think I don't think that there's a way to make it work the way you're thinking without having people abandon. I'm with you. Sometimes you absolutely have to have that data, but then sometimes I've been thinking about it as like the data czar or the data person needs to be paying attention. Okay, well, which libraries have missing required metadata? I'm going to get on people, and that's part of the governance.
Alert.
So putting shock collars on some of the work. So I get that. Yeah.
So the next one in order is one from Dan around default columns in a Power Automate flow. And if you're watching this recorded, you're missing all the fun in the chat because there is a lot going on. So join us live next time. Dan's got a good question, but it's a little deep, and I don't know that I can answer it. He's trying to set a default managed metadata column via an HTTP action. It's working, but not working. I think this would require more research. And so sadly, I don't think we can answer that live.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there.
Stefan made a good comment about custom fonts are not supported in Viva Connections because of the licensing limitations.
They actually are. I mean, they do push through. I did it the other day.
Then maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah.
Show Stefan, or maybe he should show you.
Yeah, as long as you're on the web, they work. But when you're on the mobile application, they don't work because for the mobile application, you need to have a dedicated application license, which costs you by users about 20,000 a year or something like that.
Oh.
So as long as you see the Viva Connection dashboard on the web, then they push it through, but not on the mobile application.
Okay.
Right. Well, so
that's what it is.
so that's a really good point to make, though, because if you're doing this whole brandy thing, it's because you want your brand to be everywhere, and you're not going to see it there, and people are going to be like, "What?"
Stefan, does it go down to the desktop application, or is it just mobile based?
It's just mobile based. On the desktop application Teams, you will see it because it's just the regular web embed what they have in there. But on the mobile application, they load it via React Native, which is then where the app licensing come into part, and therefore you need to have a dedicated license and cannot use the regular web fonts.
And they did get around that by just putting a notice that,
Yeah, they don't notice you. They just render the CGUI, what you always have.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all the questions in the chat, so we can move on to some of the other content that we have. So we get this question a lot about Entra ID and app permissions versus delegated permissions. So I wanted to just quickly do this because I think it's an important thing, so that people understand that when you have a Microsoft 365 subscription, you have sort of this one-to-one relationship with an Entra ID domain. So then you have an Entra ID directory. And in Azure, if you have Azure subscriptions, you can have multiple Azure subscriptions that trust that Entra ID domain. And so from having that Entra ID directory, that's where app registrations happen. They're, application registrations when you're in Entra ID in the Azure admin center, you essentially go to a section that says app registrations. And that is an area where, as Todd's going to talk about a little bit, where when you're using PnP PowerShell, the Microsoft 365 CLI, which is also a PnP thing, or if you're building custom solutions, you need to have an app registration in your Entra ID. Now, there is a scenario where someone can create an app registration in their tenant, mark it as being multi-tenant, and that means that you then, as a consumer of that application, would end up with something under the enterprise application blade that's called a service principal. But essentially, that's an object in the tenant that is the security principal that represents that application. So there are two types of permission types, and I think that this is generally not understood by so many people. The one I'm going to start on the right of this slide. App permissions is one of the easiest ones to explain because it's the most obvious. So when you have that app registration, you can give the app registration application permissions, and essentially that's like like, let's say we were going to give access to this app registration to the Microsoft Graph, and we were going to say, okay, I want this app registration to have users read all app permission and files read write all permission. All of those types of permissions set as an app means that when a non-user authenticates with that app registration, so it's called an app ID or sometimes a client ID and maybe a client secret or a certificate. When that application authenticates with that, it has access to all the files if it has files read write all. It has access to all the users if it's users read write all. Whatever permissions it's granted, it has access to all the things. Where the confusion comes in is user delegated permissions. So when that is set, so when you have an app registration and you say, I want to add delegated permissions, what that is saying is when you say user or files read write all, for instance, and you set that as a delegated permission, it doesn't actually mean that whoever's coming in with that app registration gets to read all the files in the tenant. It means they only get to read the files they already have access to, not all of the files, just the ones they have access to. So if I'm a global admin and I log in with in a context like that would use delegated permissions, so I'm using like my username and password or whatever, I'm going to see all the files in the tenant because I'm a global admin and I have access to all the files in the tenant. But if Carrie logs in and she only has access to files in like 2 or 3 sites in her OneDrive, then she's only going to have access to the files that she already has access to. And it's a really important distinction. I think people see those app registrations and see, oh, this app is requesting files read write all. That's terrible. We don't want them to have access to all the files. Well, if it's delegated permissions, they don't have access to all the files. They only have access to the files that you already gave them access to. And so I think that's an important distinction. And so, Todd, this is where, just to give you sort of a ability to pontificate on this, where the PnP PowerShell, the multi-tenant app, so I mentioned this earlier, the multi-tenant app that existed already, that was created by the PnP, has gone away. And so now everyone needs to create their own app registration. And so if you wanted to talk to this a little bit.
Yeah. And it's funny, as you were talking about that in the chat room, Mike Dixon's like, is this why all my PnP PowerShell scripts quit working? Yes, this is exactly what happened. And so the app registration that Microsoft had, every PnP PowerShell user in the world was using, they deleted that on September 9th. So the easy fix is you just create your own, and then you can either reference it in your connect string. So you can say, connect PnP online, all the stuff you normally do. And then if you're using username and password or interactive, then you just put what your client ID is and it just works. The other thing you can do, Mike, is there's an environment variable that you can set. And when I'm not looking at the camera and all this kind of stuff, I can post it, or you can email us or something. You can set it on your machine and it just adds it automatically. The Connect PnP online knows to look for that. And so then all your scripts will just start working again. Easy peasy. But when the discussion about this was going around about having to create our new app registration, Erwin, the godfather of the PnP PowerShell, and Vesa were talking about this, and they said, this is a great example or great opportunity to create your app registration with only the permissions that you need, and so that will pare them down and it will make things more secure. And I have nothing but tons of respect for Vesa and Erwin, and in any field where we both, or the three of us, all know something about a topic, they all know more than I do about any given topic. But I disagree with them on this because, like Julie said, even if the app permission is read sites all or sites read all, I still have to have permission. There is no way to use a delegated permission to make an end run around security. So opening it up all the way is still going to be restricted by the user. So I would say my advice on this is the new PowerShell. PnP PowerShell, as of a week or so ago, has the command for creating that local app ID, and it's got all the permissions under the sun just do that, because again, you're going to be governed by the user permissions. And then, yeah, Dan Toft in the chat room, there's an environment variable, Entra ID _ client _ ID. Set that to the GUID of the app ID you create, and then all of your scripts will just magically work.
To Dan's point about can we have Microsoft clarify the approve admin consent? So what that is, and I'm sure Dan already knows, so I'm just repeating it.
Just
for everyone
teeing it up for you.
Yeah, I'm sure Dan knows, and I'm sure, but it's more for everyone else who maybe doesn't know and or who watches this recording. So remember, if I said that if you have an app registration or a multi-tenant app registration, and then you use it's the first time you use that application registration, the client ID, you get a service principal in the tenant that you used it in. And if you're the global admin, when you log in with that app registration, you'll see a window come up that shows all the permissions that is being requested and asks you to consent to them, which is perfect. If you're the global admin, it'll give you a checkbox at the bottom that says you can consent for everyone. And what that just does is reduce friction. If you're okay with that application and you're installing it, and the whole point is that you want it to work, if you're the global admin and you consent for everyone, it means that everyone else that goes to that app, when they log in, they won't see the consent to these permissions box, because 99.99999% of the time, end users are going to see that box and be like, I don't know what this is. So they'll just click it or freak out and call the help desk. And all they just really need to do is click accept. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't malicious solutions that might be, being installed by an end user that really shouldn't, and blah, blah, blah. And so having that consent there is really good. So obviously, as a global admin, you make sure you don't want to global consent something that you don't know what it is, right? You want to know, oh, this is an app registration. I know what app this is for. I'm very happy. I understand the permissions that I'm granting it and what this app can do, and I trust whoever created this app. So there is that aspect of it. But the point of that admin consenting is just to streamline the login for other users. Now, if you go to that enterprise application, you can find the service principal associated with that app registration. You can go revoke those permissions or any individual permission at any time that you want to. And if the app permissions update, you can go back and grant again, and they'll all show up again, and you can and it'll refresh it, or you can remove them all. You can see which users have consented to them. If you don't grant as the admin, you can see a list of all the users who've consented, and you can revoke them. So you have control as the global admin to go remove that service principal associated with that app registration at any time. So you do really have control over that. I'm not watching the chat, so is there any other questions we need to go to?
Let me do mine. I found a bug.
Oh, all right.
2 minutes.
Yeah. Go, Anderson.
So there was a question that we got through something that asked about setting default values on managed metadata columns, which was part of one of the questions we answered today. I found a bug in researching this. So when you're in the content type, in content services in the SharePoint Admin Center, and you go to the classic settings to change something about a managed metadata column and or other kinds of columns by clicking, go back to the classic experience, it takes you to a page that looks like the image on the right. It's sort of the generic, like editing a single line of text column screen, which isn't right. That the managed metadata column that's in that should be shown there it's not showing me the managed metadata stuff, right? So I can't see what term set it's connected to. I can't change its default value, any of that stuff. The link is a bug. It's actually going to a page called fieldedit.aspx instead of fieldeditx.aspx, which gives you all of the fields for the different column types. So the trick here is to click on site columns at the top, then click on the column name again, and you'll get the page with all of the settings that you would expect for that particular kind of site column. So that's a bug that I'm gonna report, and we'll see if that ever gets fixed. But it's a workaround that will actually help you. It's something where they're linking to the wrong thing from that modern content services view of content types
Nice.
All right.
That-
in under 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's really well done. I don't think we have time, although you did hit on Brand Center already.
I did a little bit,
Want
and
to
we
say?
can, no, we can actually do another session on the updates to theming in Brand Center, so.
Well, then you see the slide, but
Yep.
we will skip the slide. And we had one resource. And so last but not least, October 30th is our next episode of Sympraxis. We're going to do the many faces of permissions in Microsoft 365. We started looking back at some of the episodes we've done previously and realized it's been a long time since we talked about permissions, guest access, that kind of thing. So that will be our
Oh, you just talked about permissions at some length.
We
right
did,
Yeah.
we did.
One aspect.
All right, so see us live. I'm going to be in Dallas at TechCon 365, and we have a discount code in there. ESPC, Mark, Derek, and Patrick will be there, and I will be, and Mark will be at Community Days Miami. So definitely join us for that. And if you're in Burlington, Mass, day after tomorrow, Friday, is Collab Days New England. So come out and join us for that. I was going to say tomorrow, Dan, stop laughing at me. I see you. All right, it's free. Come join us. And thanks everybody for joining this episode of Sympraxis.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Sympraxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.